Smaller buses. While not as numerous or perhaps not as well known as their larger counterparts, there were still some very interesting models for carrying a lighter load of passengers. This is the story of 4 awesome little buses and their influence on the bus industries of their time. Hi, this is Jeffrey, and in this video we're going to take a look at 4 small awesome buses. Now these are buses that can hold up to 25 seated passengers, so they're small to maybe mid-sized buses, but they're generally smaller than the typical transit bus you will see in most cities. Now, these buses are from 4 different countries and were in operation between the 1960s to the 1980s, give or take a few years here and there. So let's get started in taking a look at these 4 small awesome buses. The smaller buses we will be looking at in this video are: number 1, the Mazda Type A light bus of 1965 to 1971 from Japan. Number 2, the Bedford J2 of the UK. Number 3, the Bedford JJL, also of the UK. And number 4, the Flxible Flxette of the USA. So let's now take a look at each. Mazda's first bus for general public use was the 1965 25-seater Mazda Light Bus Type A, based on a concept shown at the 1964 Tokyo Motor Show with its huge laminated safety glass windscreen and futuristic styling. It was a world away from the traditional buses found in Europe in the 1960s. Other than the styling, the Type A was typical of the era. The engine was a 2.0-liter gas 4-cylinder mounted up front, providing 81 horsepower. Capacity was 25 passengers. There were actually 2 types of front-end windshields, one with a curved design and the other with a more angular aesthetic. The more angular bus has some resemblance to the Lost in Space Chariot land vehicle, while the more rounded variety may have taken its inspiration from the GM New Look Fishbowl bus. The huge glass windshield must have given drivers excellent visibility, but on a sunny day, the temperature of the interior must have been raised quite a bit. The styling may have been a bit too much for Japan's conservative fleet managers, and though it was in production from 1965 to 1971, few were sold, and it was replaced with the more conventionally styled Parkway model in 1972. The Bedford J2 was based on a modified version of Bedford's 2-ton truck chassis built from 1958 to 1976, which was available with a 3.52-liter petrol engine or the normal choice of diesel, originally a 3.14-liter unit upgraded to 3.29 liters in 1960 and then to 3.61 in 1967. A 4-speed synchro-mesh gearbox was fitted. Bodywork was available as a bus or coach normally provided by Plaxton, which produced a specially adapted cut-down version of its embassy body specially made for the J2, originally to a 7-foot 6-inch width and then 8 feet inches wide after 1965. Its length was approximately 18 feet 5 inches. Plaxton added some special touches to the J2, such as small rear fins and rear wrap-around windows. Duple, Willowbrook, and Catino also bodied some J2s in the 1970s. The J2 was popular with everything from government departments and local authorities to various other types of operators who had use for a small coach or bus. A few J2s still survive in preservation and for hire, including fully restored examples such as a 1967 maroon and cream Plaxton-bodied version owned by Empress Coaches. The Bedford JJL was developed jointly by General Motors Commercial Vehicle Operation at Dunstable and Coach Builders Marshall of Cambridge. Although innovative, the JJL was ultimately unsuccessful. The JJL was 8.5 meters long with 24 seats and space for 10 standing passengers. A pre-production prototype was built in 1976, and the only 4 JJLs produced were built from 1978 to 1981. It looked quite modern for its time and even had some design elements in common with the American GM motorhome of the 1970s. When the project died, Maidstone Borough Council, a loyal Bedford customer, took delivery of the JJLs in 1981 and 1982. UKK 335X and AVS 903T were sold to Brighton Buses and then to Northern Bus Sheffield in 1992. EKX 648T also went to Brighton, but was scrapped in 1988 after a collision with a tree. HKX 553V was sold to Bournemouth Transport, trading as yellow buses in 1983, and then on to the Goodman Group, where it saw service with Rambler and Goodman's coaches. It is the only surviving JJL and has been exhibited at rallies. HKX 553V was sold in 2018 to a collector. Prior to entering service in the UK, one JJL was sent to General Motors in Detroit for 3 weeks, possibly to evaluate the unit for modification for a US version. In 1985, Bedford considered reviving the JJL. Marshall Special Vehicles had the idea to reintroduce the JJL under the Marshall bus brand, although the idea never caught on. It is said that some of the JJL's DNA must have gone into the Marshall minibus, which was a failure, as well as the Dennis Dart, which was far more successful. The Flxible Flxette was a light-duty bus built from 1964 to 1976 by the Flxible Corporation, producers of the larger New Look series of transit buses. The Flxette was designed for small city transit systems, livery services, shuttle services within large cities, or other operators that didn't need or couldn't afford a regular full-sized bus. In the early 60s, Flxible received inquiries on a bus smaller than their 30-foot New Look model, one with a shorter wheelbase able to navigate narrower streets or twisting roads, handle a smaller load of approximately 20 passengers, and perhaps most importantly, be significantly lower in price. Assessing all these factors, Flxible determined the best design would utilize an existing truck frame with a forward control cab-over-engine body, maximizing interior space while limiting overall length. Design-wise, it would almost be a mini version of its larger New Look transit bus. Fortunately, Flxible had acquired the Southern Coach Manufacturing Company of Evergreen, Alabama, a producer of buses and motorhomes, in the early 1960s, and its production facilities provided an ideal fit to build this new bus. The first Flexset emerged from the Evergreen factory in 1964. These minibuses were 96 inches wide, 20 feet in length, and seated 19 to 23 passengers. Gross max vehicle weight was around 15,000 pounds. Flxible was known for meeting customers' specialized build-to-order requirements, and the Flexset continued that trend by offering various configurations. Chassis were sourced from existing manufacturers, mostly Ford, but Chevrolet and Dodge were used in later versions. The Ford 300 cubic inch 6-cylinder was the typical engine. Federal safety regulations and the Ford Cutaway, which was a less expensive alternative, eventually spelled the demise of the Flexette. Flexettes probably couldn't be considered an attractive design or of very high quality, but they were built well and served their operators' needs. Service life was typically 10 years, and while a few hung on longer, most were gone by the mid-1980s. So, there it is, the story of four awesome little buses of their time. Now, these are just representative of the era that they existed in. Of course, there were other small buses, probably many more small buses, but these are just four representative buses that showed how great small buses can be or used to be. Now, if you know of any other small buses, let us know in the comments, because if people like this video, maybe I will do a follow-up on small buses eventually. Now, as for the USA, we probably will never see the likes of a Flexset ever again, because companies like New Flyer or Gillig probably will never build a 20-seater bus or a 20-foot-long bus. It's just not going to happen. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at four small, awesome buses. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye.